What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Raider World. So in this episode on the Dorado project, we have the HogWorkz Street Glide Outer Fairing. Yeah, so this is the Dorado Gold Batwing Outer Fairing for the Street Glide. I cannot wait to get this thing on. It's gonna look amazing. I know for those of you that have a Street Glide, I'm sure you removed this outer fairing before. Just a few screws, take out that windshield, disconnect that headlight, and that's pretty much it. So all we're gonna do is remove the current outer fairing, get everything swapped out to the new outer fairing, get this right back on, and that's pretty much it. So let's go. Now for tools, I use the inch-pound torque wrench, a couple of size ratchets, a flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, a couple of size T27 Torx bits, T25 Torx bit, T25 T-handle, T27 T-handle, and some 3M double-sided tape. So before I start removing the outer fairing, I'm going to cover up the tank and the front fender. So I'll start off by removing the trim and the windshield. You have two short outer screws and one long middle screw, and these are a T27. So I'll take the middle screw and put this back in just to support the outer fairing while I'm removing the other screws. Now I'll remove the two Torx screws on the right side. These are also a T27. The top one is a long one and the bottom one is a short one. Same thing on the left side. You have two Torx screws and they're a T27. Now I'll take out this middle screw so I can take off the outer fairing. I'll rest it on the fender so I can disconnect the headlight. So there's a tab on the top of the connector on the headlight. You just pull up and pull out. All right, so we have the two outer fairings on the table. And like I said, all we're gonna do is take everything off of this one and put it onto this one. So on this outer fairing, you have this fairing vent bezel. It does have some adhesive on the bottom and some adhesive on the top. I'll see if I have to use a heat gun or not to get this off. And then you have your headlight door, your headlight, and then you have your headlight trim. Some of this will come off in one piece. I'll show you how that works. And on the back side, you do have these clips that your screws go into. You do have to transfer those onto this. That's how you mount your outer fairing. Pretty simple, guys. Let's do it. So here you have your headlight door. This is more of a trim. You have this Phillips head screw on the bottom. You take this out and it'll come off. Just keep track of the screw because you will be reusing it. From here, you can inspect your gasket, make sure everything is good. This one's good to go. Now, if you were just changing out your headlight, you would remove the headlight door or trim, and then you have these three Phillips head screws. You would take those out to change out your headlight. Since I'm removing the whole assembly, I have these four Torx screws that are screwed in directly into the fairing. I'm going to take those out to remove the entire assembly. And to remove these four Torx screws, I'm using a T25. Now to remove the headlight trim, you just lift up and it comes out. So here you have these clips on the side. You have them on the left and the right. So the easiest way to get these clips off, just push it, apply some pressure, take a screwdriver, pry up from the bottom. Just take your time when you're doing this and then just work it off. So here you have your fairing vent bezel. You do have some adhesive on the bottom. As you can see, it's already coming off. You can use a heat gun to get it off or just slowly pry it out. So as you can see on the fairing vent bezel, you have some adhesive on the bottom and some on the top. what I'll do is I'll take some double-sided 3M tape that I already have, and I'll replace this adhesive. All right, so getting everything installed onto the new fairing, it's pretty much how we took everything off. First thing I'll do is install the fairing vent bezel. You have 2 tabs on the bottom and these 2 tabs on the top. You just want to make sure those click in and you let that adhesive set. So I'll start from the outside and work it in. Then I'll just apply some pressure for about 30 to 60 seconds. Now I'll reinstall these clips. You just want to make sure that you install them the same way with this threaded side towards the fairing. Now I'll reinstall this headlight trim. Just slide it in to the top first and then clip in the bottom. I'll make sure that these holes are lined up so I can reinstall the headlight assembly. Now, depending on what headlight you have, I do have the Harley-Davidson Daymaker. The connection is at the top. Same way I took it off, I'll install it the same way. I'll get the top 2 holes lined up and I'll start my screws. Now this is a new outer fairing, so these screws are starting a new thread. So you just want to make sure you get them in nice and straight. I'll get all these screws started before I tighten them down all the way. Now with these screws, you just want to get them down nice and snug. You don't want to over tighten. Now I'll reinstall the headlight door or trim, and you have that 1 Phillips head screw on the bottom. Just make sure your gasket is seated properly. Now the torque spec for this bottom screw is 22 to 32 inch-pounds. I'm just going to get it down nice and snug, but you don't want to over tighten. Now I'll remount the new outer fairing. First, I'll connect the headlight. So once again, I'll use this middle screw to support the outer fairing while I get the other screws in. Now before you start securing all the screws, just check around the outer fairing to make sure it's properly seated. So I'll get all my screws started before I tighten them down all the way. So the long one goes on the top and the short one goes on the bottom. Now I'll remove this middle screw so I can get the windshield in. So I'll put this trim piece back on for now. I will be changing this out later. Now the torque value for the windshield screws, it's calling for 25 to 30 inch-pounds. So the torque value for these fairing screws is 20 to 30 inch-pounds. All right, so that wraps it up for this episode on the Dorado project. This was the HogWorkz outer fairing for the Street Glide. Very simple install as far as getting everything off, switched out, and then put back on. Obviously, we're gonna be changing out the windshield trim and the windshield out in later episodes. We have so much more to go, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for future videos, and I'll see you on the next one. So in this episode on the Dorado project, what are my fingers doing? I don't know. Ugh. I almost knocked this off the table. That would have sucked. So in this episode on the Dorado I keep doing this funky thing with my fingers. I'm shooting with this one and hitchhiking with this one. The Batwing. The Batwing. All right, so here you have it. The gold wing, the gold wing. It's a gold wing. I feel like I'm doing the chicken dance. Batwing. All we're gonna do is take the current outer fairing off. We'll think about it, and then we'll get everything on here, and then somewhere, and then along the middle, we're gonna swip it and flip it for mercy. All right, so we have both will get this vent fairing bezel, and then you have this headlight, this headlight blah. That's what it's called, it's a headlight blah. Trademark, copyright. What? Who said that? Very simple, guys. Anyone can do this. 2 beater, 1 beater, no beater. Anybody can do this. Anybody. I mean, anybody. Anybody can do this. Anybody. Oh, it's late. It's late.